Shall we introduce
Yeah.
everyone?
So we're here today at the Copland House, which is particularly awesome. in Copland's backyard. And we're here with Amy Beth Kirsten and Elisabeth Halliday. Elizabeth and I are part of this Emerging Voices project, and about a year or year and a half ago, we commissioned Amy to write us a piece, and we spent the first half of today working on it. It's called Fire Balloon.
That's Zach Herchen.
It's me.
In case anyone.
Yeah, so we wanted to take this time to talk to you about the music that you write and how you got into it, and maybe if someone's halfway around the world and playing your music, they can watch and see what you're like and get some insight somehow.
Great.
So one of the first things I noticed reading like your bio or things about you online was that you didn't really start composition lessons until you were 30.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could talk about like what you did in undergraduate studies or like at a young stage in your life.
Sure, yeah. Well, I think, all of us has kind of a different route to getting to composing, and mine was pretty circuitous, I guess. I studied vocal jazz performance in undergrad, so I had, I was basically a trumpet for 4 years, doing all kinds of...
Yeah, I mean, it is like you were literally a trumpet, right? That was the
literally,
program?
Yeah.
You had to do juries
Yeah.
and know how to outline chords like a trumpet player
Exactly,
might.
yeah, exactly.
That sounds...
Did you have a vocal teacher?
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, they had, there was a voice teacher, a jazz voice teacher, but there weren't many voice majors,
Right.
and so there were more horn players and stuff, and so it was just, they didn't kind of really know what to do with me, and so they just put me with the, I had the kind of trumpet patterns and scales, and I had to do everything that a trumpet player would have to do in a jazz program.
Yeah.
Did you ever play the trumpet?
No, never played the trumpet.
Elizabeth is a singer. Did you play trumpet? You did play trumpet, didn't you?
Oh, how weird.
I just realized that. I've seen you hold a trumpet.
You really are a trumpet player.
No, not at all. I decided, I think I was having a crisis at some point during Peabody and was like, I want to play the trumpet. And not like in lieu of being a vocalist, but I just really thought that would be fun to pick up. And so I took brass class for the music ed majors at Peabody, and we learned how to play the trumpet and the trombone and the French horn. And it turned out that my embouchure is much better suited for the French horn, and I was so sad about that I was like, screw it, I shall play no brass. And that was the end of that.
Oh.
So do you have an instrument?
No, they lent them out to us.
Okay.
But I also found that, and I was pretty terrible at it, I was a little disappointed. I thought, I would have some sort of natural gift. But I did find that the pressure that it put on the throat was not at all like singing, and I started to think that maybe even if I had more of a natural ability to play the trumpet, there would have been a clash of technique and sort of health.
Yeah. Well, you would have gotten a much different piece had I known all this before.
Right.
But
what did you do before college?
Before?
in like high school?
That was
Yeah, I mean, were you
so long ago.
singing, were you like singing jazz and taking jazz lessons?
Well, in high school I was a pianist, and I sang in all the choirs in high school, and I accompanied the swing choir, and
So you're really involved.
I was really involved with and I did musicals, and we did Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and I was the narrator. So
That's on your bio,
that's
right?
the
that should be the first sentence in my bio, but it isn't. So yeah, no, I mean, so music's always been a part of it, and I was kind of like fiddling around with composing back then. I think one of the things that I did when I graduated was I wrote a song for my choir teacher, and
Cool.
I don't know whatever became of it, but
It's in the archives for whatever.
it's somewhere, yeah. I mean, who knows? Probably at the bottom of a desk drawer in his desk or something. I don't know. Yeah. So I mean, I think the motivation has always been there. There's been an interest to kind of make something.
Right.
But while I was studying vocal jazz performance, I was was gigging a little bit with jazz combos and stuff like that, but I was mostly writing songs, and simultaneously was a singer-songwriter while I was
Is that
going to
something
school.
that was like encouraged by teachers, or was it sort of your own?
No, this was not. I didn't tell anybody. You know, I kept it. I was, you know,
So were you doing anything with the songs? Like it must get out.
I was
that
performing
she's
them.
got these
Yeah,
songs.
yeah, not.
We saw her at a bar. She
Yeah.
sings crazy songs.
It's really funny because like the pop and the jazz worlds for students are, I mean, in my experience, are completely different. I mean,
Right.
the people are different, the places you perform are different, so.
And no one would ever know.
No, and I was supposed to be practicing my chord changes and improvising over chord changes. The cool thing about Illinois Benedictine, where I went to undergrad, was that the program was so small that each of us got our own practice room
What?
with a key, and it was,
I'm going there.
it was like this soundproof little closet with a piano in it, you know, and so I was in there all the time.
Oh my
When I
goodness.
wasn't waitressing or in class or blowing off class, well, when I was blowing off class, I was in the practice room all the time, not practicing but writing songs.
Wow.
And those songs that I would perform at, you know, clubs and bars and coffee houses, any place that they had like open mic nights, or you know, I got a couple of showcases, you know, where it was like I was the featured artist and stuff.
Right.
So yeah.
So how did you get from there to the Peabody Conservatory?
Yeah, that's yeah. Well,
Composition.
I was gigging a lot, playing a lot of my songs. Strangely, they're not jazz influenced at all, which is really kind of bizarre. But and I was doing that, and then what happened? At some
That was in Chicago?
yeah,
Is
that was in Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was working, you know, at day jobs and then singing at night and have this kind of
The lifestyle.
dual life. It was like kind of like a superhero, you know, nobody really knows what you do afterwards.
Did you ever consider a stage name or something like that?
Yeah, I did, but
What was it?
Amy Kirsten Beth.
I went
Sneaky.
through at least a dozen different stage names.
What
And I
were
had
some stage names you used?
well, I had bands. I had a duo actually that was called, what was it called? Shoot Mon 2. Because my last name then was Schutzenhofer. And the guy's last name was Monahan.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, it's like, wow, this was a long time ago. So Monahan, Shoot Mon
Mm-hmm.
Never
2. Yeah, it's a very...
I like it. I like it.
So that was that, and I had a band called Stella that made a CD and didn't play any gigs. No, we had one gig. You know, so it was a grand experiment, and yeah. So then I was working and singing, and 9/11 happened, and after that I was like, what am I doing with my life? You know, I need to be helping people like that. And I decided to go to medical school after that.
Whoa.
So I started taking all these kind of pre-med classes with the idea of going to med school. And that lasted for a semester, and I woke up like literally in January after 9/11 happened. I woke up, shot up in bed, and I was like, I have to do music. You know, I have to. There's a way to connect with people that maybe on a different plane. You know, it's not necessarily bandaging people or taking their blood, you know, pressure, or you know, but that actually kind of connects with them spiritually or in some way that.
Did you feel like you had to like pursue like the more classical side of writing after that? That's what led you to go to Peabody and get a doctorate?
That's what led me to go back to school to go to Roosevelt, which is where I got my master's.
Okay.
Roosevelt's in Chicago, and the whole idea with that was not necessarily to study classical music, but just to do music. And so when I went back to school, I applied for the composition program late. I missed the application deadline. You know, it was just this, I sat up in bed and I was like, I have to do this. I have to go to Roosevelt. I sent in all my stuff, didn't apply anyplace else. And so it was just this total, you know, fluke that I got in. And the whole idea was for me to learn how to produce and do arrangements of my songs, like pop music. Like I had no inclination to go into
So it's just to
classical
get like
music.
more of a theory background. And
More of a theory background, to learn more about the instruments, to, you know, learn recording techniques and stuff like that. And that was the kind of idea. And then I got into the program and I started hearing all this amazing music, and I saw a performance of the International Contemporary Ensemble, ICE, at Chicago College, the Art Institute of Chicago. No, at Columbia. They have a really nice theater there, or a space, and ICE performed there a lot, free concerts, and I saw them perform Vox Ballet by Crumb, and also 8 Songs for Mad King, and I was like, this is it. What am I doing? I mean, this stuff is amazing. Like, you know, these players they're not just, you know, playing notes, but they're actually characters, you know, they're wearing masks, and I think the theatrical elements and the idea of fusing those two things together, because I'd actually also done a lot of music theater, written music for off loop theaters in Chicago, and that was always something that was intriguing, and so I just, you know, on top of that and hearing, you know, all kinds of other great music from the 20th century, I was like, wow, you know, this is my brain, just my head exploded. And then there was no turning back. Like I just, you know,
That's funny.
I've been really focused on that since that moment, you know, so.
Your current music I saw described as being, I think, lyrical and experimental. And the lyricism makes a lot of sense because you write a lot of your own text. Or do you always write your own text, or have you?
Not always, but a lot of the times I do. Yeah.
And that stems back from
the song, from the songwriting, and I had kind of and I had a poetry minor in college, so and you know,
does the poetry usually come first?
Oh, it depends on the piece. Sometimes they come simultaneously. Sometimes it's the words first. Sometimes it's a sound I hear which will inspire a word, you know, so yeah.
We saw you just recently. We saw a piece of yours at the Copland Center, and was that, I'm trying to remember now, was that entirely wordless, that one? All I remember was there was the stuff that but
I mean, there's a lot of that character music, and that's sort of the experimental aspect I saw described. Sort of this, you like non-tonal sounds, things that are like almost effects.
Yeah. I think a lot of maybe the experimental label comes from asking performers to do things that, you know, are, I mean, now it's not such a big deal because performers can do so many different things, but like trying to just ride the edge a little bit with what's possible. And
is that like a conscious decision you made? Like, I want to have sounds that haven't been done before?
No, I think it just has to do with I think it has to do with pushing myself to be as creative as possible with limited instrumentation. And so rather than, you know, thinking about, okay, well, I'm going to write a piece for solo flute, and just having a flute line, well, what if I can actually make 3 lines and use the voice somehow to draw a little bit wider, you know, with a wider brush than just the single line. And there are all kinds of, I mean, Bach did it with, you know, counterpoint, you know, and you know, so you can do it just with one instrument and not having any of those effects, but because I think I come from a place where I'm starting, my starting place is voice, it's kind of a natural sort of way into an instrument is figuring out how it can operate with or without the voice, you know.
Did you do anything similar to that in your pop music writing?
Oh no, that's a good question. But yeah, no, that would have been cool.
For sure, staging like a pop song.
Yeah, that would have been really cool. Actually, maybe I will now. That's a good suggestion.
Bring it back.
I'll write a. Actually, there are a couple in the 8th Blackbird piece I'm writing. There are songs in it, you know. And I haven't done that since I was, you know, it's been 12, 13 years, and so there's actually a little bit of that in there. now, so we'll see what happens with it.
Right.
Really exciting to,
Yeah.
And that
to hear.
that piece is actually laid out on the floor here. Right? It's this
Yes.
piece. I think I have to show just a
Do you
little bit,
mind?
No,
if
no,
you don't
no.
mind.
No,
It
absolutely.
does look really,
Um,
really cool.
We're gonna risk loud camera noises to show just a little bit.
This is kind of this is an earlier version of it. It's gone through several iterations, but I kind of refer back to this every once in a while to keep my mind on the original idea. And
Right.
sure, because when you do a collaboration, there's always the risk that it's gonna turn into a sausage. You know, a lot of feedback coming to you from all different directions, and so just to kind of stay focused on the original impulse, I think is important for composers.
You said you use this large paper
Yeah.
format
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you describe why or how you started that?
Yeah, it has to do with being trained as a jazz musician. I had a severe panic attack when I went back to school after studying jazz for so long because the music that I was doing was off the page. It was, I was improvising. I was, not tied to bar lines, not tied to written rhythms.
You're having panic attacks because that was new, or that's what you were doing?
I'm having panic attacks because suddenly I realized I was going to have to compose something and write it down and trap it in staff paper, and that was just a really huge psychological hurdle for me to get over. Even though I'd studied classical piano, it had been such a long time, and I had been creating so much music,
And for yourself, right?
Yeah.
You're not trying to send it to someone
Right.
to have them figure it out.
And in the writing songs, I didn't write down any of those songs except for like the words and the chord changes, and so I'd been so away from having to figure out how to capture something on paper that this was a technique that my composition teacher Roosevelt said, well, why don't you just get a big piece of paper and draw a picture of what the piece sounds like, as just a way of kind of getting into it,
Right.
And it was a really important thing for me to do because when you sit at the piano with manuscript paper, it's excruciatingly slow, and I wanted to make music, I wanted to like spontaneously just create and like do it. I could hear the music. I wanted to get it down faster than I could, and so I found that just drawing a picture of it, helped me at least capture something immediately. When you're a songwriter or you're a jazz musician, there's a sense of immediate gratification that you have because you're always interacting with people. You're creating something simultaneously. Or spontaneously, and simultaneously, I guess. And so to have to slow down that process was so hard.
Do you feel or notice a big difference between like writing out musical notation on staff paper versus like doing it on a computer? Is one even worse than the other, or are both sort of the same, just different versions of that sort of limiting setup?
Well, I try not to write down anything too soon. I have this kind of weird, I don't know if it's weird, but it works for me, where I actually improvise as a way of composing, and I record improvisations, and I videotape improvisations at the piano.
Oh man, I thought that was a light.
Oh yeah.
But that's your own setup.
That's my own thing, so that if I have an idea, I can play through it and I can work it out, I can capture it, and then I can go back and see what it was I was doing. It helps me have a more immediate connection to what I'm doing than because because also the other thing is that the scores that I write are pretty detail oriented, and so it takes a long time to get all those details in, and
Do you ever hire someone to like transcribe your improv video?
Watch this video of me and
I haven't, I've thought about it, but I actually, it's such a, I find the process of transcribing so gratifying. And I know it sounds weird, but
It's a way of editing.
and I never just write down an improvisation. You know, I have hundreds of hours of these improvisations, and I go back and I listen to them, and what I'm looking for are little seeds that sound like I could make something out of that. And so I'll transcribe that one section, and then I'll improvise on that, and then I'll see what happens. So this is kind of like this layered improvisation approach.
How do you organize hundreds of hours of improvisation?
It's terribly unorganized. It's just
Like
a big
I feel like I
mishmash
have
of-
some weird archives of things like that. It's
Yeah.
like there's no hope of ever going back and finding out what's in it
Yeah.
or having it be useful.
Yeah. It's funny because I think, you know, I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that I have that I've completely forgotten about, and it might be fun at some point to go back and listen to really old stuff. And I may, if I get desperate for ideas, I might do that. But what I found in you know, using this process is that there's usually something that catches my ear pretty quickly, and I have a sense of, wow, okay, that little piece actually sounds like something, it sounds like me, it sounds like I could do something with that. And so they're never so far away. It's like, you know, I catch them. It's like I heard this quote by a composer named Eric Stokes, and he said that composing is like chasing butterflies. You have to catch something and make it sound inevitable. And I always loved that, and that's kind of what I do. You know, is I try and catch something and then figure out if there's a potential there for it to kind of have an organic life, you know, that sounds good.
How long is the process of like taking what the improvisation was and making it to what is actually in the final piece? Is it very similar, or do you usually travel?
Yeah.
I mean, like, do you change what it was and revise it, or does it usually like, no, that's it, that's the thing that's going to be in it?
No, there's a lot of revision, you know. I don't know, I mean, it changes for each piece. It's, you know, I have the same kind of starting point with each one, but I try and just kind of intuitively let whatever rabbit holes I'm going to go down with a piece, I just kind of let that happen naturally. Mm-hmm. And so it's good because it keeps it fresh, you know, and if there's, you know, sometimes I'll do an improvisation and there's a bigger chunk that I like and I can figure out how to use that. But then there are other pieces where there's like literally, you know, 10 seconds that is like, okay, well that's something, you know, that I can do something with that.
That feels like when we were recording our CD.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's like, how much do I want to nitpick?
Yes.
Dang it.
Those are, that's excruciating too.
Yeah.
Doing editing CDs is, yeah.
It was excruciating.
Yeah. It's a good problem to have though.
That's true. That's true. And it was all of our own making. So
Pain of your own making is always the best kind of pain.
That's true.
I guess if we're talking about like how you work on pieces, how about finishing a piece? Like how do you know, or what does it feel like to decide that it's done?
Well, I usually, you kind of just know, I guess, you know. If the process has been particularly long and it's been a battle, then I know, because I you know, usually get a little teary at the end. You know, it's like a double bar. It's like, I did it, okay. You know? And there's usually, those moments are usually followed by, wow, I really need to fix that section over there. You know what I mean? So there's a sense of being finished with maybe like the whole sort of form of it, or the whole kind of block of the piece, but then refining the details is something that goes on for a while after I feel it's been finished, because those are just kind of details, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, there are some pieces where I, you know, like orchestra pieces, for example, that I have, none of them are done. It's like, because you just don't have, I've never had enough time on an orchestra piece to really get to that point where I feel like, okay, this is, you know, an
Right.
exhale at the end. It's always been like, you know, here's the
Being
parts.
performed tomorrow.
Yeah.
It is so much.
Yeah.
The normal,
it's a lot.
imagine like the normal steps are just like expanded 10 times,
Yeah.
100 times over.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Do you do a lot of editing your pieces, or do you even have this luxury as they're being rehearsed? Like, do you get to work with the performers who are doing your piece and hear it in the process and then say, oh, you know what, let's move this note, let's change.
Yeah.
Do you get to do that, or is it sort of like once you're done it gets shipped to California and you never see it again until they perform it?
Yeah, you know, I've had a lot of luxury so far because I've written mostly for people that I know, you know, and so built into that process is just a nice communication, and you know, they'll play things for me over the phone, and you know, so I've been really lucky to have that kind of thing, and things have changed, and you know, they've asked me to, you know, notate something in a way that's easier for them to read, or you know, I'll hear something and I'll be like, oh god, that note isn't quite long enough, you know. So yeah, I mean, to me it's a fluid kind of process, and you have to, you know, music breathes so much differently when real people are playing it, and you kind of, as a composer, I think you have to be really tuned into the rhythm and the feel of a piece in the hands of the performers, and you know, be flexible enough to fix it if you need to, you know, that to make it work right, you know, to make it work. So it's, you know, and then there are some pieces where I just write and I hear it, I'm like, wow, that sounds great, awesome, let's move on, you know. So you know, it's different for every piece, you know.
How about titling your pieces?
Oh, titles are not a problem. I mean, they always are. They always come first. You know?
Yeah?
Oh yeah. I don't
Like before anything?
Before
you have a
anything,
title.
I have to know what the piece is about. You know, conceptually and musically. Well, sometimes musically I don't discover that until later. You know, and sometimes the poetic version or the poetic meaning of the piece actually, and the musical idea, the relationship between them. Once the music takes over, I have to listen to the musical language, you know, and where the music wants to go, and sometimes it renders the title meaningless because it actually means something else, and that's okay. You know, nobody has to know that but me.
Right.
No, we were
Confessions of the composer here. Yes.
We were really excited. I think before we saw any music, we heard that we were getting a piece called Fire Balloon. And yes!
Yeah.
Awesome!
Well, I went through way too much of like seeing the piece and learning stuff before I realized that was a hot air balloon.
We're like, oh,
Is that,
Pictured
I don't even know, is that like a Midwest term? Do people call it fire balloons, or is that your own term?
It's an old-fashioned Midwest term, I think.
like the early days.
The early days. I'm trying to remember. Maybe it's not Midwestern, but it's. I'm trying to think if I heard it first. I think Ray Bradbury used fire balloon and something, and I think he's from the Midwest, and I don't know. I thought it was such a cool.
Maybe he made it up.
Maybe he did. I don't know. Yeah.
No, that's cool.
Those writers. Making up words.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, where I grew up was in the path of a hot air balloon, kind of flight path of the hot air balloons.
Mm-hmm.
There was a
Awesome.
field, like 10 minute drive from where we lived, and we would go out there on. We didn't have a lot of money, so our entertainment was trying to find free things to do that were interesting.
Right.
And so, you know, I just remember being out there on the hot air balloon field with my mom and dad and watching them take off, and then, you know, then being at home in the backyard just playing after school or on the weekends or something, and hearing like, oh. Like, and it's such an exhilarating thing for a kid because you know what's coming. There's this like really colorful thing that's about to emerge, you know, in the trees, and you hear it so much, you know, you hear the sound of it way before you see it, and so it was such a cool memory of childhood. So
Yeah.
yeah, and then so I wrote a poem about that had to do with the idea of this thing emerging, kind of this very colorful, lovely thing emerging, kind of, you know, as a metaphor for love, and so that's kind of where the poem ties into the piece too. So
That's very cool.
That's awesome. I don't think I've ever seen one.
What?
a hot air balloon?
Never.
Get
Wow.
out of
Never.
town! Oh my
No,
gosh!
Never.
Wow, we might have
Have
to
you?
do something about that.
Yeah.
Do we have them in Massachusetts?
I don't know why, but I've seen them.
Wow.
I feel like I've seen a bunch. I've been to Wisconsin a lot because that's where my mom's from. So maybe.
Maybe it is a Midwestern thing.
I
I
don't
don't know.
All I know about fire balloons is like they have to land somewhere and they're not really that controlled. They're just kind of like, I'm coming down.
That looks like a field. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I've never been up in one before. I've always wanted to, but
My
yeah.
parents rode one. And they said that to land like partners from the company were at the landing site, and they would like try and see what it is and be like running, and then they have ropes and they try and like just grab this dang rope and
Wow.
pull it down.
Yeah, it seems a little like whoa.
Because I don't even know how you can control if it goes.
What if you
You
hit
can't
it?
control if it goes left or right.
Right.
No, you can't.
You
You with
can-
like they're like jets or something, or like
You can put air in
sandbags. Is
it
that
to make
from
it
a
go up or
movie?
down.
Put the
They have sandbags
out?
and
Yeah, but that's to go up or down.
yeah. I don't know how
I don't
you.
know about left and right.
I don't know either. Maybe you can lean on the basket one way or
Everybody
something.
We should clearly take a trip.
We'll just make it up now.
The three of us.
Right.
We could perform.
That'll
the
be the music
piece
video for it.
in a hot
In
air
a hot
balloon.
air balloon.
That's how Stockhausen written all over it.
You gotta get like
it's not a helicopter, but
if they get like Red Bull funding, like their Stratos experiment thing they just did, which you guys don't know anything about.
But yes.
They took a hot air balloon up to space. It's nothing.
Oh wow, cool.
How could you do that? There's no air in space.
Guys were in a spacesuit, and then they set the world record for
Oh, I
longest
did hear
skydive.
about that, but I didn't know it was a
Oh,
hot air balloon.
that's what that was. The longest skydive.
I mean, it not a hot air balloon, just chemical air or something.
Like a blimp.
Yeah, more
and
like
I have seen blimps.
Okay.
Many a blimp. But you know, the hot air balloon's like
Right.
the rustic version of the blimp. This conversation
The plump is
may have gotten off topic.
Right.
What about helicopters? Have you seen a helicopter?
I've seen a helicopter.
You've been outside.
We had about 10 minutes from where I grew up, an Air Force base that would have air shows, and we would have to flee because they went over our house and they were really
yeah.
loud. So it was like
Yeah.
same proximity, but
Mm.
it was like whenever it was air show weekend, we'd be like, get in the car,
Yeah.
drive to Vermont.
With everybody else was coming in.
Yeah, and we were like,
yeah.
"Oh."
That's funny.
Yeah. To get back on topic, what type of music are you listening to right now?
Such a, it's
Do you listen to music in
awful-
free time
awful
or?
question.
Sometimes, yeah. Not as much as I would like to be. Trying to think. I have been listening to Simon Holt, who is a British composer who has written a couple of orchestra pieces that I really like. Judith Weir.
I love her.
Yeah, she's great. You know, I go back to Bartok string quartets a lot because I just love them, and Beethoven string quartets.
Mhm.
There's just so much good compositional stuff in there that I
Yeah.
like revisiting, you know, and just seeing how those composers unfold material and yeah. So.
Do you ever find yourself wanting to perform some of that? Like in some manner, as having a background as a performer?
No.
Or do you like,
Yeah,
like
that's
oh.
convenient for you.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's, you know, I mean, no, I think I made a really conscious choice not to be on the performance end of things, and it's not because I didn't like it. I really loved performing, but, you know, it's funny. It's like when you have a band or when you're a solo performer, it's so much about you, you know, and I got really tired of myself.
Mm.
And you know, it's like I just, you know, I don't know, there's just something that wasn't very satisfying about it, even though I loved it. I love being in front of an audience and singing for an audience. There's just a part of it that kind of got tiring and boring, just for me artistically. And so being on the other side of things where, you know, you are interacting with musicians and you're building something together, and then you can just kind of sit back in the audience and appreciate what you've done is like such a wonderful thing, you know. So, yeah.
I'm always envious of the fact that, like, the work you do stays. It's there. I feel like as a performer, like it's always slipping away.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I mean, I guess, yeah. I don't know.
Or
I mean,
even if you record it or videotape it, you're doing it. It's different every time you do it. So then suddenly there's a version of it that is permanent but isn't necessarily reflective of the work you've done and sort of what the piece becomes over time.
Yeah. This is heading into a kind of existential, philosophical time. Yeah.
It's probably too early in the day for that.
I haven't had enough coffee.
Or too late. I have a bus at 3:30 bus.
That's
I
true.
gotta go.
This is a very strange day for us. Yeah. Yeah, we should probably wrap it up. Maybe one more question.
Okay.
This is something I've been asking a lot of composers, and for you it might be interesting, is if you have a particular venue you ideally like to see your music in.
Yes, and it probably has something to do with being a singer-songwriter who performed mostly in small rooms. But it's really hard for me to write for concert hall space because I'm just so used to an intimate sound. When you write for a concert hall space, I think the idea is that your musical ideas have to be more of an orator, you know, rather than a poet. And I think some intimate pieces work really well in the concert hall. It just depends on the space. But the thing that I have in my mind is like a black box theater or a smaller concert hall. That's why I think I haven't quite gotten an orchestra piece right yet, is because my ideas are my musical ideas are they're not smaller, they're just more detailed, I think. And orchestra, there's just this kind of thing that you're kind of shouting out a musical idea,
Right.
More like this than like whispering something, you know. And so it's a different feeling.
Is that more a function of like the space, where someone far away, it's quieter for them, or they won't hear a quiet thing, or is it more of a function of reverberation, where things get muddied?
Yeah, it may be a little bit of both. Yeah, I think, you know, I've never once in my life thought while I was composing, gosh, the person in the back room isn't going to hear this, because I just don't care, you know. if
that person should have bought more.
Yeah, I mean, I just am not thinking like that. So if I'm writing something really quiet or wispy or something, and somebody in the back row can't hear it, it's not something that's important to me. What's important is the way the music sounds the way I want in whatever venue it is, you know. And that's, I think, one of the only things that I feel inflexible about. You know, I'm not going to make a, you know, pianissimo suddenly mezzo forte because somebody can't hear it in the back row, you know. But I mean, you know, there are ways to do those sorts of things that, you know, nowadays.
Yeah, and performers often consider that. Like if I'm in a bigger space, you're gonna
you're gonna up
some
it a
things.
little bit, right? Exactly. Yeah, and it'll have the same effect in a larger space, I guess, too. You know.
And hopefully, if the acoustics are good, the front it'll be just softer in the front as well.
I mean, I actually have never had a piece performed in a huge hall, you know. I mean, I'm trying to think, the Miller Theater is right about the size that I'm used to, you know. Something bigger than that is, I mean, I mean, maybe a little bit bigger than that, but you know, it's I don't know. I'm rambling now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for letting us visit
Sure.
you at Aaron Copland's
Of
house.
course, anytime.
And thank you for writing us a piece.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
My
I really
pleasure.
enjoyed it.
Thanks for playing it so well. You guys sound terrific.